Green MP Chlöe Swarbrick, Climate Crisis Garbage, April Fool's Day 2023. The following video clip is being replayed in light of the recent propaganda strike for climate change, where devious politicians like Chlöe Swarbrick, co-leader of the New Zealand Green Party, go out of their way to mix and mingle with children in order to poison or indoctrinate their minds with climate change gobbledygook. Academics, professors, teachers and MPs have a duty to ensure that our younger generation's minds are not taught garbage, especially when it comes to so-called climate change crisis. If politicians like Chlöe Swarbrick were genuinely concerned about climate change, then they would be off to Tiananmen Square in Beijing to preach their gobbledygook. Perhaps climate change wouldn't disappear, but we all know who would, and that would be even better all round for New Zealand. Thank you for listening. Geraint, on behalf of WhangareiTim.
Climate change. New Zealand's sleight of hand, April Fool's trick. New Zealand, 1st of April 2023. It's the 1st of April, so maybe it's April Fool's Day for most of us, but for politicians and some academics, I think it's their April Fool's Day every day. Let's have a quick look at their sleight of hand climate change trick, designed to pull the wool over most of the general public, which sadly, they always seem to get away with. I guess the public must overly trust politicians and academics for some unknown reason. I wonder how successful these so-called experts were with COVID rules, regulations and mandates in New Zealand. Recall, hundreds of thousands of deaths were forecast by the professor academic experts. Just for this exercise, let's give the politicians and academics a break. Let's assume that they are 100% correct and that greenhouse gas carbon emissions are completely responsible for climate change, and that no other factors like the sun or Earth's inner core or whatever have any impact whatsoever. Here's how they deceive the public in New Zealand. Firstly, everyone knows that China is by far the worst polluter in the world, and secondly, New Zealand is a clean green country compared to China. But in order to force a political agenda, you have to quickly change the cards by clever, sleight-of-hand deception. Most people fall for this trick. Politicians and academics use it regularly. I won't go into the math why comparing countries on a pollution per capita basis is often extremely misleading or inappropriate, but suffice to say, as the population decreases, the figures become less meaningful. Using the per capita measure, then the Falkland Islands, with a population of around 3,000 people, are one of the worst polluters in the world, and an island with just 1 cow and 0 people would be infinitely bad, far, far worse than China. In essence, you should forget the per capita measure when it comes to pollution. Total emissions by country is all that effectively matters. So beware politicians and academics when they quickly deceive with per capita pollution. But at first glance, although not meaningful, New Zealand does look just as bad as China on a per capita basis, even though New Zealand is clean green by total emissions comparison reality. That's because there is another, not so obvious trick up the politicians and professor academics' sleeve. Here it is. China is a developing country and New Zealand is not. So the correct measure is not per capita, but instead it should be per developed urban and rural capita. This would make the actual polluting population of China a lot smaller, making their true per capita pollution a much larger number and much larger than New Zealand's. In reality, China is much worse than New Zealand on a true per capita basis, because a lot of their population lives below the poverty line, like Vanuatu, and does not meaningfully contribute any greenhouse gas emissions. Clever sleight of hand political deception. In summary, there's absolutely nothing New Zealand can do that will have any direct impact on climate change. Absolutely nothing. So it's best the politicians start explaining that to the New Zealand public at large, especially the younger generation who are suffering mental health anguish from all of the political nonsense being spewed out today. New Zealand would be far better off adapting to climate change and developing clean green environment policies instead, if they actually cared about the country, rather than trying to deceive the public in order to justify transferring reparation funds to third world countries to help them develop. That's failed socialist ideology disguised as caring and kindness, Jacinda Ardern type politics. Artificial intelligence is on the verge of enormous breakthroughs for humans. Use it properly and many problems will be solved, including climate change, without the need to continually deceive people. Thank you for listening. WhangareiTim.